All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for coming, and we'll get going. So welcome to the Plugfest webinar for NVMe and NVMe over Fabrics Fall Plugfest number 20. Myself, I'm Carter Snay. I'm a technical manager for data center technologies at UNH-IOL. I primarily deal with customer relations and testing, and I've been working here for 6 years doing this sort of work. I'm sitting here with James.
Hi, so my name is James Kahn. I work with Carter as a technical manager for the data center technologies. I'm the development lead, and I basically have been working on NVMe for a little bit over 5 years now at the lab.
And before we get rolling into it, here's just an agenda so you can know what to expect that we'll be talking about today. So, we'll be going over the integrators list information, the updates to the test plan for this Plugfest, the actual tools that we'll be running at the Plugfest. We'll also talk about what we're targeting for even the next test plan after that, because that process is going now as well. We'll talk about the tool support, what you can do to get in contact with us if you have any questions about the tool, how to use it, just the logistics of the Plugfest, and then we'll go on wrap up and open it up for questions. So first, what is the UNH-IOL? Some basic information about us for those who are unfamiliar with us. As the name suggests, we are a business under the University of New Hampshire. As a result, our primary workforce which is those who run testing, develop scripts, build hardware, and a lot of people who interact with our vendors, are young engineers or students learning the ropes and building new connections, which is a great thing for them and a great thing for us as well, and for you too. Of course, with learning, there are some mistakes made, but it's all alleviated with staff engineer management, with several distinguished engineers and members of large standards bodies throughout the lab. We have testing and development that covers data centers, embedded systems, baseband, IP, DSL, open source, physical layer, PCIe testing, and many more service groups that all maintain third-party neutrality. You may even see some UNH-IOL staff in standards bodies meetings where we're there to learn about the direction of standard and new technologies to ensure we can offer adequate testing for it. For NVMe specifically, in the data center group, which we're a part of, we've been testing NVMe org since 2013, and the last Plugfest was 10 years of NVMe testing, so now we're at 10.5 years. But who's counting? More specifically, with our connection with NVMe, as I said, we've been working there for 10.5 years now, and it is a collaborative process to create test plans and test tools to automate conformance testing for NVMe controllers, SSDs, hosts, switches, targets, and initiators. We host the NVMe integrators list on the UNH-IOL website, which is a publicly available list that shows any interested party that the device that is listed has gone through a test suite of over 400 tests and is conforming to the standards set in the NVMe specifications. As of October 6th, we were up to 415 NVMe PCIe products, which means we've added 16 more since the last webinar for those who are keeping score. In the over fabric space, the number is lower than the PCIe. However, there has been a lot of work going on in the transport space in the NVMe organization, of which we have targeted technical proposals in the next test plans coming up that will require a lot of testing to ensure that the devices are implementing the specifications correctly. So what goes on the integrators list? Here are types of devices that can be placed on the list. On the PCIe side, the list accepts PCIe SSDs, host platforms, and PCIe switches. In the over fabrics integrators list side, that can accept network interface cards that act as targets or initiators, host platforms, JBOFs, and switches. These can be used across several different transports, and we test over RoCE, TCP, FC, and iWarp. Alongside the base NVMe testing, the over fabrics devices also need to qualify for over fabric specific test cases, some of which are broad and cover all over fabrics operations such as discoveries, connections, get properties, and so on. And some are more specific to the transport that the connection is made over, depending on if the transport itself has a dedicated NVMe specification. Here are the requirements to have the device put on the integrators list. They are pretty similar to the ones for the past few iterations as well. Of course, the main difference is that this is based on test plan 20. So if applicable, the passing the latest version of 20, as well as passing NVMe MI scripts are required to be put for the NVMe to list the NVMe MI version on the integrators list. Along with conformance testing, so the base, NVM, and MI if applicable, there also is interoperability testing, which must be passed. This consists of the device of identifying the device, formatting, sending traffic, hot plugging if applicable, boot testing, and identification through power cycles and hibernations on multiple different host platforms. It also includes testing for unique identifiers that can be found in the registers and NVMe identify controller and identify namespace data structures. So this ensures that we have multiple devices that when they are in the same platform or just in general, that they have unique IDs and that they will not show up as the same device twice in a subsystem. And then for the over fabrics list, for initiators, we're doing only interoperability testing, but for targets, we do both interoperability and conformance against the standard NVMe conformance test plan and the over fabric specific test plan. We can test an entire solution if you have a device that acts as a target and an initiator, or if you have a specific solution comprised of a NIC, JBOF, and specific NVMe SSDs. And then here is the information that we post on the integrators list for everyone to see, which like I said before, is hosted on the IOL website. We have been listing a website link as an additional information item, but if there's anything else you'd like us to list, please reach out and we can see what we can do to accommodate. In addition to the NVMe integrators list, which is hosted on the IOL website, something else I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is the NVMe org hosted compliance list. So once your product is on the UNH-IOL hosted integrators list, another place you may choose to feature your device with more details is the NVMe org hosted compliance list, which is directly on the NVMe website. So on that list, you're able to upload a greater or longer product description that is more detailed than the data you just find on the integrators list. As the integrators list really mostly shows that the device has passed the required test to be on that specific version of the list, but does not have more details than that beyond what I showed before, which is the firmware version and the form factor and the NVMe spec that it was designed to pass with. You can also upload a photo of the product on the compliance list on the NVMe website, so potential clients or customers can see exactly what they're buying and what they'd be looking for. Recent products posted on this list too can also be included in the NVMe org monthly newsletter, so it's another place to get more exposure on this device. Okay, so switching gears a little bit to go just into the actual test plan development process. There are 2 major releases every 6 months, which coincide with the Plugfest. So we have released TP20, test plan 20, and now we're doing the Plugfest for version 20. They are written by UNH-IOL on behalf of the ICC, which is a work group in NVMe. And it is a multi-phase approach, just like any other technical proposal, which goes through the NVMe technical work group process. So in phase 1, we present the targeted technical proposals and open a place for dialogue if there are other technical proposals that members want us to focus on in the next version of the test plan. At this point, the test plan or the technical proposal is a TPAR, which is a technical proposal authorization request. So we're looking to become an actual TP, a technical proposal, before moving on to the next stage. The next stage being phase 2, which is when we select the testable items out of the technical proposals, finding the things that are required based on what was agreed upon in the tech work group. And we also, at that point, there's a chance for the UNH, the ICC, and the tech work group to discuss the proposed tests and make sure we're covering everything that everyone wants us to. Phase 3 is where we actually write the test procedures and actually start to implement or complete implementing the tests into the software. So that's really where the rubber meets the road. All new tests go in as FYI. What does FYI mean? So for your information means that the test is not required to pass in order to be put on the previously mentioned integrators list. This is because it is a brand new test and a brand new feature. The test itself has not been vetted against a wide array of devices that support this feature, usually because the feature is so new that there has been only a small number of devices that support it, if any at all, at the time of development. And after enough testing has been completed over the life of the test, with passing results showing multiple manufacturers are implementing the feature correctly. We then propose to move the test from FYI to mandatory during the third phase of the test plan writing process, phase 3 of the technical proposal. The test plan is written by UNH. The test plan written by UNH is the official conformance test plan in order to get onto the NVMe integrators list, because it goes through the peer review of all members in the NVMe technical working group or any member of the NVMe org who wants to look at it before it becomes finished. And then this slide is a representation of the process we were just going over, we just discussed, showing how it works from our side and also how it works from the product design side. You can see that on the top track, we write the test cases and then implement them. And once they're implemented, we wait for hardware implementations, which is why they're FYI at start, like I mentioned before. And once we can test against several devices, we can move it from FYI to mandatory, as I mentioned before. We present this data to the technical work group when we think we have enough information to show that a test has been run enough times with different types of devices to show that it is passing. So this data is this decision is not unilateral. It is everything we do is going through ICC, going through the technical work group, and does need board approval as well. From the product design side, starting on the third box of the bottom track, the devices are sent to our lab for testing, either for a Plugfest or for a private reservation test. And we test it independently and discuss the potential failures, and we can accommodate firmware updates to get the device conforming to a conformance state, if possible to do within the actual test reservation. And with that being completed, then we can put it on the integrators list. So now moving on to technical proposal 2016, which in non-NVMe technical proposal speak is test plan 20, which contain tests for base, NVM, ZNS, and over fabrics transports. James will be talking more about the specifics of TB 2016 in a sec, but first, here are the test cases that are going from FYI to mandatory in TB 2016. This means that while failure on these test cases in version 19 will not prevent 19.0 certification, failures in these test cases now in 20 will prevent certification for version 20.0. The 1.3 test cases were added in version 18.0 back in July 2022. 1.411 was a test added in March 2020, and 1.17 test cases were added in 2020 as well. So these have been in the tool for a while now and have been run against countless drives, and we have now seen enough evidence to show that the tests and the devices are ready for this. So these tests, if supported now, will be required to pass in order to make the integrators list for version 20. And now I'll hand it back to James, who will go over the specifics of TP 2016.
All right, thank you, Carter. So this is a kind of dense slide that we have here, but we're very excited for what implemented in this last test plan. One of the major things that we added was flexible data placement, which is a big TP that came out, and it's been brought to our attention that's very important. And with that, we've actually written 91 test cases to cover it. So in general, we have test cases that deal with FTP configuration, the statistics log page, the events log page, identify controller, some of the new namespace management operations, formatting when you're in FTP, IO management, receive and send commands, the event feature identifier, and also the data placement directive. So we're very excited to actually see drives use this and test out these new test cases. It was a proof of concept last Plugfest, but now that it's actually in the test plan, we're excited to see what happens. Some of the other things we've added, ECN 105 added some new changes. Some of it has to do with write protection being enabled and formatting or sanitizing when write protection is enabled. There's some changes for asynchronous event clearing, asymmetric namespace access, and also we added 1377, which is a test for supported capacity configuration list. We also added temperature threshold hysteresis. There we go. So that was a new feature that was added, and we added a couple tests there. One of the big changes also was should to shall TP 4136. So we actually had a lot of test cases that were already implemented, but they were fairly relaxed because they were shoulds before. So 168, 557, 211.2, and 321 were test cases that already existed, but were a little relaxed gaps in their requirements, and they've been tightened up with the change to shall. But the other ones that are new completely have to do with identify namespace CNS11, formatting when an IO command is in progress, smart health log page controller over subsystem differentiation, namespace management, and some reservation persistence. And also, we added some important enhancements. So there was the addition of the cancel command. So 1380 and 81 are checks for cancel command support and make sure it's being reported correctly. 123 is cancel command tests. So we have a couple tests that's in single cancel commands, or a cancel command that cancels multiple different commands at once, or is sending a command that's to an invalid submission queue ID or to an incorrect command ID, and just see that the controller is responding correctly. We've had the addition also of namespace admin label. So there's a various tests here that checks setting the namespace admin label, checking that it's savable, and that it is cleared correctly when you do sanitize. The modified tests, I suggest going to our website to read these. So there's a lot of changes here, but a lot of them are fairly small. We've got some vendor feedback on certain tests, or there have been small changes in the interpretation of the actual spec. So we've made little changes here, and I do suggest reading those just to see what's changed, but there shouldn't be anything major there. For ZNS, we've added 2, 6, 18, and 19 also from ECN 105. And this is the addition of zone management receive of zone descriptor data structure, making sure that data structure is formatted correctly. We also added tests in the 5.1 group. These are ZNS namespace management enhancements. And these tests revolve around namespace management, the create command, and basically making sure that if a requested active resource or requested open resources, if it exceeds the allocated or unallocated resources, that it works correctly. And then we added some new MI test cases. So here we added a couple things to verify the multi-record area and the PCI port area. Those are the 11.3 and 11.4. 7.10, we added a test that checks when you do a pause command with CSI bit set to 1, which is invalid, that the parameter error location bit indicates the correct error location, which would be the CSI bit there. We've added some tests 7.8 and 7.9 are checking that devices correctly use the replay response message. 9.24 is verifying that the data offset and data length return the correct data if you're issuing these with a get log, just so you can get that extra granularity instead of just using the log page offset. And yeah, if you want to look at the modified tests, very similar to NVM, I suggest looking at those. They're much more minor in the changes there. All right. So now that you know what our tool is, what we've added, you probably want to get your hands on it and use it, hopefully. So to get our tool, you have to be an NVMe member here at the lab. So if you are not currently a member, you can reach out to Carter or I, and we will help set you up there. But if you are a member, you'll have to fill out a licensing agreement. And once that's filled out, you'll be given access to OneDrive. You might already have access to OneDrive. OneDrive is where we're currently uploading all of our tools. There should be 20.0A, 19.0E, and 18H, yeah, getting up there, available now. And once you actually have that piece of software, we can send you a license, or if you are currently using the RLM license that we've implemented over the last couple of years, you can just drag and drop that license over into this new package and it should run fine. There also are installation documents on OneDrive. If you need those, you can reach out to us if you need to also. Just a quick reminder that our tool is meant for Ubuntu 20.04 and running on kernel 5.10. So that does mean downgrading the kernel when you install Ubuntu. If that's not possible, let us know, but there are some limitations if you are running on a different kernel. All right, so just another brief reminder that our tool is now in OneDrive. I think most people are there, but every once in a while we see someone download something from Box. But Box is at this point out of date. We cannot upload anything there. Everything is here on OneDrive. If you don't have access to OneDrive, we'll briefly go over this later on how to get access, but you can always reach out to Carter or I. All right, so why do you want to come to Plugfest 20, or why do you want to send your devices? So Plugfest 20 is the first chance you're going to get to be able to test 20 and make it onto the integrators list. You can currently run 20 wherever you want in your lab, but you won't be certified, and we won't be certifying until the Plugfest happens. It's also a great week. We dedicate this week primarily to doing test reservations. So we are just focused on making sure that anything that comes in that week is tested. So you get a guaranteed slot. You don't have to wait in the reservation list in the calendar to try and get a slot. You're guaranteed a slot, and we'll be working really hard to make sure that if you have any issues or we see any issues, there's very quick turnaround that week.
Okay, I'm gonna take over for a sec here. So we've talked about the tool, we've talked about NVMe and our current test plans, and this is what is coming up even further down the road, just to give you a heads up. So TP 2017, this is test plan 21. So here are the TPs that we're looking at for the next time around as well, since this process is going on right now, and I encourage you to participate and give any feedback if you wish, based on our presentations that we make to the NVMe technical work group. There's a long list here. I won't go through everything like we've done in TP 2016 because we'll do this next time around too. But some of the bigger ones I have here are things such as reachability architecture, which is adding new logic on how different types of namespaces will be able to interact with each other, such as memory or computational namespaces. And this will be very important soon, since it'll have clearly defined out how to use these namespaces when things like computational programs are added to NVMe. Even more here. The biggest one on this slide is definitely cross namespace copy. So that way we'll be able to copy data between multiple namespaces without having to use the host at all. And there's been a lot of work going on in the technical work group to get this out, and it was just ratified a couple of weeks back at this point. It adds new statuses to fast copy operation and some new atomicity requirements. Non-storage namespaces are also now clearly defined in one of the new TPs, which is important in relation to reachability and to determine what a storage namespace is and what a non-storage namespace is as well. And we're also adding these ECNs. So as James had talked about before, generally these are more changes to tests or modifications of tests. Sometimes there are new test cases that come out of these, but in the general, it is a lot of changes to existing tests, or maybe it's just editorial, but we need to go in and do due diligence to make sure if there's any incompatible changes that we account for that in the next version. And then the big thing for the next one coming around, the next test plan, is the proof of concept for computational programs. Last Plugfest, last test plan, we did a proof of concept for FTP. We're not having any sort of proof of concept for this time around, just based on timing, but the next time, the next Plugfest and the next test plan, we'll be implementing computational programs. This is in phase 3 at this point, so we are not totally done with it yet. So the work is not done, and we are just looking into it to see what we can do to be ready for this. There are already other TPs that are being targeted that have some of the infrastructure for computational programs, so we are looking to be ahead of this and be ready and have the proof of concept and be able to start testing as soon as possible. I'm going to hand it back over to James for this slide.
All right, so if you have our tool and you run into any issues, this is basically how you would give us an issue. So you can send us an issue. We prefer currently to use JSM, which I'll go over shortly in the next slide. But you just need to reach out to us. You can do it through JSM, preferably, or NVMe Lab. We'll then respond to you. We can give you an issue number and kind of give you an estimate of how long that fix is going to take, if we've already noticed that fix and made it, and it's just going to enter the next release, or if it's going to take a little bit longer. Internally, we're going to track that through Jira and Bitbucket and go through and actually make the corrections. Eventually, when it does get released into an official release, it will enter that ticket number that we give you, will enter the release notes. So if you look at the release notes, you can see, oh, look, my ticket's been resolved. And then you can actually run the test and hopefully it passes. So We have a couple major releases. We have 2 major releases every year that correspond with the 2 major test plans that go out. And then we have minor releases periodically throughout the year as we catch or see issues with our tool. If you have any issues, there's the direct link for JSM. You can start there, but I'll go over it a little bit more in the next slide. So here is a little overview of JSM. So on the top right, you can see IOL Interact support page. There's a button, you can report a bug. There's also links to OneDrive from here. And you can just go to that link, report a bug. Please fill out as much information as you can. You can include logs here. You can include basically your system setup. And we'll get back to you within 2 days and just kind of converse from there, depending on what we see. And we'll just, as it progresses, we'll move on and give you more information. If you don't currently have access to the portal, the 2 links that you've seen previously will get you there, but you won't have an account yet. So you can sign up for an account. You just request portal access, and then you're going to request it, put your company name in, the email addresses that you want added, so you can add multiple if you have multiple people that are going to be reporting issues or using our tool. And then that will send us a request, which we can approve. Of course, there's also a link now on the actual UNH-IOL NVMe test services website, so you can access the link through that. Or, worst comes to worst, you can also reach out to the NVMe lab or Carter or myself, and we will set you up. So just let us know.
Okay, so here's the final more details on actually registering. So I don't think we've explicitly mentioned it at this point yet in this presentation, but both of these Plugfests are going to be virtual at this point. So just want to get that out there now. The registration for the PCIe Plugfest will close on October 26th, so it's about 2.5 weeks out from now. And then for Fabric, since it is the following week after that, will be another week after that. So at the end of the month, really look to have registrations completed by the end of this month. For devices you can bring up to 2 unique products at a time, and all other products will be waitlisted and accepted on a space available basis. The logistics, if shipping equipment, which everyone should be shipping equipment, make sure they arrive by the Friday before the event begins. And it's especially important for PCIe devices to ship at least 2 samples of each product. This is because in the interoperability testing, it is required to have 2 products, especially for the unique identifiers test that I mentioned previously. But also 2 or more is better, because then we can test more at once, or if one drive happens to have some sort of critical error or critical failure, more redundancy is better to keep testing moving forward. If it's applicable, if there's any sort of debug or any cables going on or any sort of host that we need to get into, providing all details on how to get into the host is super beneficial. Also, please include any PCIe adapters you've used during your own pre-testing, so we can ensure that we're testing with the exact same setups, aside from the host, that you were testing with when you were testing in your own lab, to eliminate any possible variables that could cause unexpected failures. And if you wish for us to send the equipment back, returning labels, including a return label and packaging slip, help a lot to accelerate that process. It's not required, but it does make it a lot faster. For over fabrics, this is definitely more of shipping heavy type thing when we have massive boxes coming in for huge setups. So please make sure you have everything installed and ready to ship to us by the Friday before the event. That way we can set it up and be ready to roll as soon as the Plugfest begins. Please also provide a list of all the items that you've included in your shipment, as there tends to be a lot more bits and pieces to an over fabric setup than just a PCIe device or PCIe setup. So making sure we have an itemized list so we can return everything as it was shipped is very helpful. Please also provide all the essential cabling that is required to make the setup happen. And we'll also be available during this whole Plugfest to assist with any remote debugging, or you can set up sessions. You'll be able to connect to it remotely if need be, if you are having problems with anything. So we're fully available to do this sort of remote debugging with engineers. And here are the shipping and logistics of getting your devices to the IOL. So here is our address and who you can send it to. So just put attention NVMe Lab or NVMe Plugfest, and that way we'll know what it's here for. We'll make the schedule after registration closes, and reports will be provided by December 1st, which is a week after the final end of the Over Fabrics Plugfest. How to be prepared for testing. So make sure you download the test tools from OneDrive, like James said, and run them. This way you can pre-qualify your products, see if there's any issues that you don't expect, or if there are any things that you want to talk to us about that we can clarify. That's where we can help out, either by you using the JSM portal or emailing us directly. That way there's no any unexpected failures or surprises come the actual Plugfest event. Here are the links to download everything. Of course, you can't click them, but they're available on our website, or you can email us directly. The ICC calls, so I mentioned before that we work with the ICC group, the Interop and Compliance Committee, to develop these test cases. This is how you can actually come in and talk to us about doing what test cases you might want. Of course, you can mention it on the technical work group as well, but the ICC committee is really where we make decisions about Plugfest events and about test cases and about all those sorts of things that have to do with our testing. So there was actually one today at 2 p.m. So the next one will occur 2 weeks from today at 2 p.m. So you can find us there. And we'd like to thank our partners who we've worked with in the past or in the future will continue to work with. These have helped us in previous Plugfest for using our own tools and using their tools to get further details on the devices coming in. So thank you to all those vendors. And here is our contact information if you need to reach out to us directly. Leave it up for a second. And that concludes all of our content, so we can now open it up to questions, if there are any. Okay. One question. So someone asked that they had been reached out to about an Over Fabrics build, and that there wasn't, and we have not mentioned one in the slides. So why is that? And the reason for that actually is due to a lack of participation. We just did not have the participation required to make a large build happen this time around. So we're hoping, or I'm hoping, that we have a bunch of new transfer TPs being ratified in the technical work group that we are going to be making new tests for, that there'll be a much greater need the next time around for Over Fabrics testing. And as a result, there'll be a lot more participation and interest in Over Fabrics large builds.
All right, I see another question on Red Hat, and is it happening? So currently our tool is Ubuntu 2004 5.10, but we have been able to get it to work on Red Hat. There are some limitations. Most of those limitations revolve around the kernel. But if anyone wants to run on Red Hat, they can reach out to us directly and we can help set you up there. And there's another one on when is the next release of Interact. So we're looking to release another package for Interact on the 20th of October. So that'll come out with 20B and 19E. This is just going to include a couple minor bug fixes that we've seen since the last major release. And it is also what we plan on using for the actual Plugfest.
Okay, someone else asking about PC edition versus LaCroix edition. So the question is, why is PC edition version 20 the latest version posted, but LaCroix edition version 19 is latest posted? So why is there the disconnect there? The reason for that is we are waiting for the package to be complete from Talon LaCroix. We have sent everything out to them, and it should be back very soon. It's generally lagged about a couple weeks behind, but nothing too major. The nice thing is that the tests are based off the same test plan between LaCroix edition and PC edition. So we have complete coverage in PC edition, and LaCroix edition is supplemental at this point. So LaCroix edition is just a subset of the tests that are in PC edition, and version 20 of LaCroix is going to contain bug fixes from version 19. But beyond that, there's no brand new development going on there. Okay, I am not seeing any other questions, so just give it another sec if anyone else has anything to ask. All right, I guess that does it then. So thank you everyone for attending and have a good rest of your day.